Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Today we're going to take a look at Ascension, Dawn of Champions from Stoneblade Entertainment. This is the newest standalone up to 4-player set for Ascension. They actually haven't done a small 2-player only set of Ascension for quite a while. I think Darkness Unleashed was the last one. The interesting thing about Ascension in general, by the way, is that I really feel at this point, unless you really want to go for the Collector's Edition, which has the first 2 sets of Ascension, you should just start with Rise of Vigil. You can ignore every other set that has been released prior to that, because when Rise of Vigil was released and everything else since then has been just of a completely different quality than everything before. The game mechanics, the new and interesting mechanics like energy and the energy shards, the treasure in general, the transforming cards, the new double faction characters and constructs. It's just been amazing, and even the artwork has been getting better and better. Now, what does Dawn of Champions bring to the table? Well, it continues some of those trends. There's no more transforming heroes or constructs, and there's still the bipolar characters and constructs that belong to multiple factions. But now you also have a champion, hence the title of the game. It's a character that belongs to one of the main 4 factions of the game that gives you a special bonus if you pursue cards of that same faction. You also have monsters that belong to factions now as well, and which will also be keying off powers like the ones that your champion has. So let's go ahead and take a brief look at some of the new cards that come in the game. Then we're going to come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, I'm going to show you some of the new stuff that comes in Ascension Dawn of Champions. Now, the important thing to note here is that this is a base set of Ascension, which means that it comes with all of the typical fixings. It has a board, which I've actually got this laid out on. It has Mystics, Heavy Infantry, a parenthesis Militia, those generic gems. I don't want to show you all that. I just want to focus on the new stuff here. Now, this is probably the most drastic change in Dawn of Champions, and those are the champions. There are these 4 champion cards. Each player is going to start off with one at the beginning of the game. You can do it randomly. You can decide how you're going to do it. It's up to you. Each one of them is keyed into one of the 4 factions of the game. You're going to take the main champion card, put it in front of you. Then they have a separate card that will actually, it's a typical Ascension hero card that will go into your deck when a certain condition is met. So here is Nairi, the Lifebound Champion. Let's go ahead and focus in on what her special abilities are here. Now, each of the champions mostly functions the same. In other words, their abilities are all the same. They're just key to a different faction, and some of their the totals are different, or what the reputation you need to get to a certain point. So that's what these symbols represent. They represent reputation. The game comes with these little reputation tokens that you're going to use to keep track of it as you gain it. And the first 2 abilities on the Champions card are how you gain this reputation. So the first one is whenever you acquire or defeat a Lifebound card from the center row, you gain a reputation. By the way, that defeat part we're going to get back to later, because now monsters have alignments or factions. And then the second one is once per turn, you may spend 2 runes in order to gain a reputation, so upwards and above, and that's why it has +1 over here for both of those. Now, the second 2 abilities are abilities you will automatically gain as soon as you've met a threshold of reputation. So as soon as I get to 3 reputation on Nairi's card, I get to acquire Nairi, the Wild Queen, which that's this card here, her special card. So you'll immediately acquire it into your discard pile the same way as if you had acquired it from the center row. Her card in particular says gain a honor and draw a card. If you unite, which means you have to have played or will play a green card, you gain another honor and you get to draw another card. And then the last reputation ability here, and this is where I'll explain another new mechanic of the game, is that whenever you acquire or defeat a Lifebound card in the center row, you rally Lifebound. In order to get this, you have to have 8 reputation tokens on her. Now, what does rally mean? Of course, rally is for any of the factions, so you'll see rally Lifebound, rally Void. When you rally, or when you acquire or defeat a card that has rally, or something that gives you that ability, the next card that would come into the center row after a rally is activated, if it matches the faction that you're rallying for, you acquire that card for free. So let's say I'm rallying Lifebound, and because I just acquired or defeated a Lifebound card, if the next card that would immediately fill up that spot is Lifebound, I take it, put it into my discard pile. I just gained it for free. That's what rallying means. So let's take a look at a few of the other ones. You have Core, who is, again, these are all mostly the same. So Core, some of their numbers are different, so it takes 4 reputation to get Core's card. That's because his card is a little more powerful. You gain 2 runes and 2 combat. If you control 2 or more constructs, you get to draw a card, which can be pretty good because, of course, if you're going Mechana, you're going to have tons and tons of constructs. You have Dartha here. His master card here is Dartha, Master of Sight. You may banish this or a card in your hand, and if you do, you get to take a Mystic or Heavy Infantry without paying for it and put it into your hand. And then you have Sidranus, who is the Void Factions champion. His card is, as you might expect for a Void champion, draw 2 cards, then discard a card, and then you may banish a card in your discard pile. So it's kind of like a better version of the the Arbiter of the Void from the base set that so many people think is so powerful. So those are the champions. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the new main deck cards. We'll start with just the normal single faction cards. So you have Ogo Courier. You gain 2 runes, and the next time you acquire a hero in the center row, you can rally Lifebone. There's Rally again. Moonveil Click, gain 2, and if you unite at the end of the turn, you put this in your hand instead of your discard pile. Remember, Unite is playing cards of the same faction. Emissary of Dawn, acquire a hero without paying its cost and gain honor equal to its honor value. Starlight Sanctum, it's a construct. Once per turn you gain 2, and once per turn when you acquire a hero in the center row, you can acquire a hero of equal or lesser value without paying its cost. Here's some Mechana, the conversion port. You may treat all constructs as though they are all factions. Very interesting. The Overhaul Cleric. When you acquire this, you get to. So this is that's something that pops up quite a bit in the set actually. When you acquire the card, that ability takes place, which is pretty interesting. You rally Mechana and then gain 2. If you control 2 or more constructs, you gain an additional 1. And Adam, the Builder Adept. If this were a Kickstarter game, I would say these were Kickstarter backers like that dude Aaron. When you acquire this, you may acquire a construct in the center row without paying its cost. You gain 4 when you play him normally. And then finally, for Mechana, the Plasma Cannon. Once per turn, if you control 4 or more Mechana constructs, you may acquire or defeat a card in the center row without paying its cost. It would be very powerful. Here's some Enlightened cards. This, by the way, I hope you guys are noticing as we're going through this, the artwork in this game is so much better than previous Ascension sets. I just thought I'd point that out. I'll talk about that more in my final thoughts. But Seers of Days Past, when you acquire this, you rally Enlightened. Now this one has to do with reputation. Draw a card, and if you have 8 reputation or more, you draw an additional card. So that actually has to do with how your champion is doing. Daybreak Ascara, you can copy the effect of a hero that was played this turn, and if that hero was enlightened, you do it an additional time. Very powerful. Finally, for Enlightened Serene Ascetic, when you acquire this, you may put it on top of your deck and then draw 2 cards. Or, sorry, not finally for Enlightened. Here is Surya Light Sword. You can defeat a monster in the center row without paying its cost, and if its cost was 7 or more, you take an additional turn, which is just ridiculous. Shade's Bargain. Now, there's one card like this for every one of the factions that costs 1, is a construct, and if you have done something in particular, you'll gain a special bonus. Like for this one, it says once per turn, if you have played 2 or more Void cards, including this one, you just gain 2 combat. Maniacal Crusher, gain 2. The next time you defeat a monster in the center row, you get to rally Void. Riftgate Conjurer is very interesting because the next time you defeat a monster in this turn, you get to its reward in additional time, which you can combo off really nastily. And here's a construct, Emery Sting, one of the popular characters from Ascension. Once per turn, you gain 2, and when this enters play, you may banish a card in your hand or discard pile. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the dual faction cards. Alright, so first we have the Rift Watch turn, which, and by the way, this concept was revealed, originally put in Realms Unraveled, and essentially these dual cards count as both factions that they are named as for any kind of card effect, and usually their abilities have to do with what those factions are typically known for. So Riftwatch Torrent is a construct, a Mechana Void construct. Once per turn you gain 1, and once per turn when you play a Mechana construct, including this one, you gain 1 as well. Surge Protector, you get to choose one. You can acquire a construct with cost 5 or less without paying its cost, or defeat a monster with cost 5 or less without paying its cost. Canopy Sanctuary, once per turn you may reveal the top card of your deck and put it into your hand. If it's Enlightened or Lifebound, you gain 3 honor. Muse of Rebirth, you gain 2, and I should be naming what these are, but that was Enlightened Lifebound. This one is Enlightened Lifebound Void. Gain 2 and you may banish a card in your hand or discard pile. The Genesis Capsule, Lifebound Mechanic Construct. Once per turn, when you acquire a Lifebound Hero or Mechanic Construct, you put it on top of your deck. And some of my favorite art in the game, Rift Drake Rider. Draw 2 cards, and you may banish up to 2 cards in your hand or discard pile, but that is May. But that's not the only dual faction cards, or faction cards, I should say, because now there are factions for the monsters. Not every monster that comes in this set is a faction monster, but there are a lot that are. And so for the purposes of anything that, like Rally, these count as those factions, and for any kind of special card effects, which is pretty interesting, actually. So you have Corrupted Sage, who is Enlightened. The reward is gaining 2 honor and drawing a card, but you also get to Rally Enlightened. You have the Mechana Monster Rejected Prototype. Gain 3 honor, you pay 3 less the next time you acquire a construct this turn, and you get to Rally Mechana. Cult of the False Circle. Your reward is to gain 5 honor, and you can acquire a hero with cost 5 or less without paying its cost. Betrayed Templar. I love that artwork too. Gain 5 honor. You may defeat a monster in the center row with cost 5 or less without paying its cost. And here are a couple of the non-faction monsters, but they're very, very powerful. Aronix the Glutton costs you 7 to defeat, but in order to, as a reward, you gain 4 honor, gain 7 combat strength, and then you can rally Monster, which I don't think shows up anywhere else in this set. So the next monster, no matter what it is, you immediately defeat. And hopefully it's Zeron, Lord of the Deoful, who Zeron was also depicted in another card, or a very, much earlier set, the first set, I think. But you get to gain 6, and he has an ongoing trophy. Trophy effects are like you defeat him, he stays in play like a construct in front of you. You may defeat heroes in the center row by paying combat equal to their rune cost. If you do, gain honor equal to its honor value and copy the effect of that hero. So that is most of the new stuff that comes in Ascension Dawn of Champions. Let's get to my final thoughts. First off, I'm just going to be upfront about something. I have been incredibly brutal on the artwork of Ascension. I've always enjoyed Ascension as far as the gameplay goes from the very first time I played it, but I have also always criticized that art style. It really was terrible for the first few sets. It had gotten progressively better going forward, but it was still just okay. And then, like I mentioned in my intro, with Rise of Vigil, and then especially through to Realms Unraveled, it just got better and better and better. And I have to say, the artwork in Dawn of Champions is not just the best artwork I've ever seen on any card in Ascension. It is genuinely fantastic artwork, period. Like, I would take some of the art on some of these cards and make it into framed art on my wall. It's just incredible. And so I really have to give props. I mean, give credit where credit is due. It's gotten better, and that is definitely saying something. And as far as all the other mechanics in the game, and I've said this in my intro as well, that's been getting better as well. You really have to hand it to Stoneblade that after a relatively long period of time that Ascension has been out, and all these different sets and cards that have come out, they can find ways to make the game feel fresh. I was super excited for the champion mechanic, and I have to say I have some mixed feelings about it, because I do feel as if, number one, there's only 4 in the box. Yes, with only this set you can play to 4 players, but of course a lot of people will play with 5 and 6. I don't always recommend that, but the capability is there, so why not at least have 6 characters to choose from? And part of that problem, though, is that the 4 that you do have to choose from are essentially the same. They're different factions, and the card that you can eventually put into your deck is different, but how they interact, and they feel very, very similar to each other, which is a bit of a problem. But still, I love anything that lets you have a special power that is at least somewhat different from other players, or let me say it this way, having a focus that is different than the other players is a very good thing. And now you have that with Dawn of Champions. You'll be not just aiming for void cards because, well, I want to kill some cards in my deck. You might be aiming for them now because you're Sidranus, the Void Champion, and you really want to get his card into your deck, and you really want to be able to rally Void whenever you can. And let's talk about Rally, because that's a very interesting mechanic too. It's very, very random. Most of the time, I'm going to say, I mean, maybe I just had bad luck, and the other players I played with had bad luck, but most of the time, nothing's going to happen. But when it does happen, when you rally for something, with no honor left, no runes left, and no combat left. And then all of a sudden you flip that card and it's like a monster or a really powerful artifact that was going to cost you like 8 of either combat or runes. You're like, yes, when you get that card because you rallied, that's great. Now, the people who hate the randomness in Ascension are really going to hate that, either because they're going to get screwed by it and never get anything they want or are able to get, or someone else is going to get some really killer item that just changes the whole dynamic of their deck, and that player is more likely to win now just because of a random card draw. But I think that because you can choose to focus or not focus on getting stuff that has rally, taking out monsters that let you rally, there's at least some mitigation there. If you're going for it, you're going for it, and you should be rewarded for it. So I can appreciate that. I mentioned that the new dual cards are back that have the 2 different factions. That's a mechanic I like quite a bit. I'm very sad that some of the other mechanics did not make it into this game. I know that they probably didn't want to bloat it too much, and I can understand that, but I miss the transforming cards. I love the transforming cards. I love the energy cards and the treasure. I wish there was more different types of treasure. I feel like we should have seen more of that now. Like, they introduced the concept of treasure and that energy shards were a type of treasure, but we haven't seen any other types of treasure. So I'm waiting for that, and I wish maybe there was more of that in this set. This feels a little more bare bones than either Realms Unraveled and Rise of Vigil did, but I do still like it. It's still great. I love the monsters that now belong to factions because now it gives the monsters a little more personality as well. And really, that feels like it should have been in there from the beginning. Monsters actually having different types and breeds makes perfect sense to me. And it probably should have been that way. Or even if they have their own completely different alignments that are specific to monsters, that would have been super cool because then you could have eventually had them those factions become like playable champion characters. Okay, I'm really spinning this off into completely different areas. But nevertheless, here's the bottom line. This is a fantastic set. Really great. Love the artwork, keeps getting better and better. Love the new rally and champion mechanics. Even though they could have been fleshed out a little bit more, I still think they're a great start. And hopefully we'll see more and more champions to come. Do I recommend starting with this set? Well, I still think that Rise of Vigil or Realms Unraveled are the sets to get first. Especially, I'll say Rise of Vigil because of the treasure mechanic, because it has the transforming characters. I think that, well, does that have the transforming characters? I can't. That might have started with Realms or Darkness Unleashed. But either way, the energy mechanic is just awesome. I love that, and that's probably a reason I would go with Rise of Vigil first. But these 3 base sets that they've released last are just fantastic, and any one of them would be great and a definite place to start. Love what Stoneblade is doing with Ascension. That is Dawn of Champions.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.